Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the Wealthy Legacy Journey. Kendall here, your host. Super excited to have all you guys here today and jumping into today's episode. Guys, I've been having a great week, so I am pumped for this. I know all of y'all have experienced this, right? Sometimes we have tough weeks, and some of the last few weeks that we've been going through have been difficult and tough, as I've been telling you guys about what's going on. This week has been an awesome week. And just a lot of like mental breakthrough stuff, which was great. Exciting news from since last episode, which you probably know because you saw the book report come out, but I actually finished Good to Great. I was really struggling to get that done, got that done, super pumped about getting that done. And then I actually picked up I think it was like Friday evening, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book by Robert Kiyosaki. And this was a great book. I read it Friday, Saturday, and I finished it on Sunday because it was so good. I am now reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and I'm on chapter 3, partway through chapter 3 on that, which is this has been a good book too. I've read about halfway through this probably 2 or 3 times. And so this time I'm going to finish it because I am on a finishing book as well as finishing tasks streak, which is awesome. I wanted to open up today's episode with talking about that movie. So last week I talked about 2 really good movies, and I said I was going to go back and watch this other movie. I've recommended this movie already to quite a few people. And this movie is A Million Miles Away. That's the title of the movie. It is about, long story short, I won't tell you anything that you won't see in the trailer, but it is about a migrant farm worker. Um, I don't know when it was. I think it was the '60s, if I remember correct, like late '60s. And they were coming up from Mexico, and they were farming all through California. And it was basically a story about how one of their kids needed higher education, and the journey that he went through to go from migrant farm worker all the way to an astronaut at NASA, which is so cool. It's about the real life story of this guy, and I wish I knew the name, but all of a sudden I realized I never thought to get the name until just this moment. So I can't remember the astronaut's name. It was a really great storyline. It's based on a true story, but it wasn't like a sappy movie. It wasn't a documentary. It was a very well written movie. On top of that, in my opinion, I'm not really like a critic on necessarily quality of movies, but I love good storylines, and the storyline I thought was really high quality. I thought the movie was great in of itself, but maybe hardcore movie critics would or would not agree. I have no idea. But there was 5 steps in this movie that I thought were so good, and I thought I've talked before in earlier episodes, especially episodes with Tim, and his kind of constructive approach. Really, you've got to figure out where you're at. You've got to figure out where you want to go. Then you've got to break, where you're at and the big long term goal into more bite sized goals. And I'm continuing to learn how to make stuff actually bite sized. I think I make them bite sized, but then I'm like, no, that's actually still too big. But it's also because I have like a really massive goal. And if you guys have a smaller end goal, that's awesome. Like, that's totally okay. I'm super pumped for anybody who's chasing any sort of goal, even if the goal is to lose like 5 pounds. That's amazing. Like, I love the health journey. I'm on the health journey, and I'm only partway through my health journey. And I pause it and I pick it back up. When I pause, I don't go back. I make sure I maintain, then I go more into it, right? Maybe your goal is you want to be able to buy a car cash, and that car is going to cost you 20 grand or something like that. That's an amazing goal. Like, just because I set these massive goals, I hope that nobody ever feels like your goals are too small. Like, even if your goal is to save up $100 or $10, like my kids, they have goals of saving up $10 for a pair of shoes. I think that's an amazing goal. Like, I love that goal. But then conquer that goal and then set the next goal, right? Don't stop. Continue that momentum that it took to get there. Continue that momentum forward. So, anyways, the 5 steps in this movie. Number one, find your goal. You have to clearly know what you want out of life. Until you clearly know what you want out of life, you aren't going to be able to get where you want to go. And it was actually cool as I was reading all the books, all these books that I've talked about, Good to Great, Entre Leader. I'm going to do the Rich Dad Poor Dad book report. He has a 4-letter acronym for focus. And then now I'm on Think and Grow Rich, and all of them have an element of you have to be dedicated and focused. But there was, oh man, let's see. I wrote a note in here. Oh man, where is it? I might just be able to tell you guys what I wrote if I can't find it. Okay, so basically, I can't remember where it is. I thought I wrote the note in the book. I've been writing and underlining and writing in my books a lot more on the last two because I'm like, after reading Good to Great and Entrepreneur Leader, I was like, well, I didn't really like mark in the books, and now I can't go back and like remember what I was thinking at those moments, and so I've been doing that now. But basically, I was thinking like, if your desire, if your goal isn't, if you couldn't ask the people in your immediate friendship circle like what it is that you're chasing in life, then one of two things is going wrong. Number one, you're not being dedicated enough to your goal because people don't know what it is that you're chasing. Or the other one is that your goal isn't clear enough. And so even though people know that you're chasing like this goal, they can't really put it into words because they don't really know what you're doing. You're kind of all over the place. So either you're not pursuing it, evidently enough and passionately enough that people around you know what it is that you're doing. Or number two, your goal isn't clear enough. And so people just can't really put it into words. They know you're chasing something, but they can't really put it into words. So step number one, and this is so important, you have to clearly know what you want. That's important for the big goals. It's very important for the small goal. Every single goal that you're setting, whether it's the bite size, the big goal, you have to clearly know what you want. Number two, know how far you are. So you have to look and see where you're standing and see how far you have to go. So I would kind of word this a little bit differently in my goal principles, but this is about a million miles away, but it's the same difference. You got to figure out where you're at, where you want to go. So his step, really he figured out where he wanted to go and where he's at. So, kind of one and the same, figuring out exactly where you're at. Number three, he calls it drawing a roadmap. And this is great. I mean, you just really, for us, it's we're drawing the journey map. For him, it was the road map, but it's essentially the same. You have to figure out how are you going to get from where you're at to where you want to go. We call those the micro goals, right? You have your big goal, you have the super audacious big goal, right? Then you have big goals along the way. You have your life goal, you have the big goals along the way, and then you have your micro goals that you get knocked out, much quicker to give you that momentum. So those are all within the roadmap. Number four, if you don't know how, learn. This is interesting. He said, if you don't know how to accomplish what you want to complete, you'll have to learn. That's so true. It's not necessarily a part of my steps, but the truth inside of that is so rich. For example, as you guys know, last month in November, I went to my very first tax sale ever. Yesterday, I went to another tax sale. I'm actually going to post a little like YouTube short video that I made when I pulled up to the office to go to the tax sale. So basically, yesterday morning, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning. I got in the car, drove up to the office. I was there at 5:30. No, excuse me. I left at 5:30. I got there at 6:30, and then we left at 6:30. We drove to Texarkana. It was like a 3-hour drive. I want to say we got there at 9:30. The tax sale started at 10. We were there for the tax sale. Then we, after the tax sale, we bought 8 properties. As I say I meant the guy that I was with. I actually didn't participate. This was me investing my time, just learning what it is that I want to do in this. He bought 8 properties and we drove around. I helped him take pictures. We did everything that we needed to do. Then we came back. I didn't get home. So we got back to the office at 6. I got back to the house at 7. So my day yesterday started at 5:30. It ended at 7 p.m. There was no financial return on yesterday's time in the day of yesterday, but the knowledge, the richness of the knowledge and the wisdom that I gained from that experience between yesterday and then last month going to another tax sale was awesome. And it's so cool because I met multiple people at those tax sales the last 2 times around who literally just showed up to the tax sale to see what it was all about, talk to people that were at the tax sale, and just see what's going on and learn. And I thought, man, that is so awesome that these guys are willing to put themselves out there, come to, an event they don't know anything about, and then just start asking people like, hey, what's going on? How did you get the information? Like, all of these different questions. Is like, that is so cool. So, in those cases, like if you don't know how to get where you want to go, or you don't know how to do what you're trying to do, you have to go out there and learn it. And the great thing about today is there is just a plentiful amount of resources for education, right? There is so much free education on YouTube. There's so many people that if you actually, after you get some education on YouTube, maybe you decide to like go to a tax sale or go to do whatever it is, try it on a small scale and learn. Like people are most of the time willing to help. And then number 5, the 5th step, when you think you've made it, you'll probably have to work even harder. And this is so good because right whenever, the problem I think is that we kind of hit this climax and we just kind of want to go, oh man, that was a really hard journey to get here. And it's like we're like two pedals away from like the top of the first summit, but the actual mountain goes up more summits. But then all of a sudden we kind of like chill, and in our chilling, like we somehow like backslide. And so the thing is like when you're chasing big goals, like I'm not gonna say you never rest, never take a break. Like absolutely you have to rest, you have to take a break sometimes. But you have to realize that when you finish one leg of the journey, it's going to take a whole new set of skill sets to get you to the next level in the journey. Oh man, I wrote something down and I thought I had it in here. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in today's episode, but basically there's like this cycle, and it's this three-pronged cycle as you're going through any sort of journey, I feel like. But I know specifically for building wealth and building a legacy. So the first step of the journey is mindset. You have to get your mindset right. And then once you get your mindset right, then you have to start going into the theory and the strategy. And then once you have theory and strategy, then you have to go to application, right? So well, I don't want to get into all that right this minute, but just think about that mindset, theory, strategy, and then application. Mindset, theory, strategy, application, and it keeps going like that as you level up. But we'll circle back on that. As far as a million miles way goes, step number one, find your goal. Step number two, know how far you are. Step number three, draw a roadmap. Step number four, if you don't know how, learn. And step number five, when you think you've made it, you'll probably have to work even harder. Guys, I'm going to talk about like a cool thing that I read in Good to Great. Please go watch the book report. It's long, but that thing was jam packed with information. It was so rich. But this last week when I read it, as I was finishing out the book, two of the big things that I got is number one, technology is an accelerator, not a momentum creator. And so it was interesting because he talked about how technology, like if your company or whatever you're building is on an upward trajectory, you will only get accelerated in an upward trajectory. If your company is on a downward trajectory, technology will often only continue to accelerate you faster in a downward trajectory. If your company really doesn't have any momentum at all and you're like, oh, I have to have a website and a brand and a logo and all this stuff, like it's not going to actually create momentum, right? And it was like that. He perfectly put into words like what I've seen over the last few businesses that I've tried to start. And that's exactly why I don't have a website. That's why I don't have like an intro or an outro. That's why I don't edit these videos. That's why I don't do any of that fancy stuff, because technology is an accelerator. It's not a creator of momentum. This right here, what I'm doing right now, publishing these videos every single week, publishing book reports in between the videos, right? Talking about the movies, talking about stuff, giving value. This is what creates momentum. Once momentum has started to be created, then I can utilize greater technologies to continue to create more acceleration within the direction of momentum that I've already created. So for you guys, like whatever it is that you're doing, don't get hung up on the technology. Get hung up on creating the initial momentum. If you create the initial momentum, and then you have something going, then you'll be able to do a little bit of technology. You'll start to grow it, and then you'll be able to keep going from there. I can see this in the example of my father-in-law's granite and marble shop that we've talked about before. Arlington Marble, they do really cool stuff. They've brought in some awesome equipment. Like they've gone from a shop that was like literally about to close their doors to he brought everybody back down. Last week we talked about the who, not the what. First who, then what. And how he did that shop. Actually, I think I talked about that in the book report, but I talked about how he did a really great job. And now that I look back, knowing what I know, I can see and understand what he was doing in that process. But he made sure that he had the right people there. They didn't change what they were doing. They just had the right people, and they got on a solid momentum, solid trajectory, solid culture for what they were doing. Then they really narrowed things down and got aggressive about becoming the best in marble and granite, right? They've cut out culture marble altogether. And then he started buying higher and higher tech equipment to help them to be better at what they do, be faster at what they do, and they're becoming probably one of the best marble and granite shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, if I were to guess. And they've just now ramped up, marketing to another degree. So it's step by step, right? He got everything streamlined at the shop, had a couple of customers that did word of mouth. Then they built up some marketing. right? Which caused them to have more stuff going on in the shop. So they replaced all their old outdated tools, but they still were using hand tools, right? And so now they've brought their technology up. Now they're moving a little bit faster, a little more productive. They buy a truck and all this kind of stuff. And so now technology's starting to creep forward. So then they start building their process, right? They get better and better and better at what they're doing. And then all of a sudden they need to run more advertising. They buy their first like really fancy saw, which allows them to do more business. And then they have even more technology, buy more saws, more CNC machines. Like now, like a whole bunch of his, I don't know if you call it a factory or warehouse or production line, whatever, is run off of these like CNCs and stuff like that. Really fancy machines. Like I didn't realize that you could run a marble and granite shop on all this sophisticated software and technology. He's gotten all this cool technology in there. He said they're about to start upping their marketing, but they've already built. You can see they started here. It was like boom, 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 and they're kind of going back and forth. And now there's like a whole bunch of technology that they added. Not so much that they can't handle it, right? But they've added a good amount of technology. Now they're about to take another step in momentum, and he's done an awesome job. And it's a really cool example. Like you don't have to be $1 million company right out of the gate in order to be successful. You just have to, build something up that's sustainable and then add a little technology and then build some more. Little technology, build some more. Anyway, so don't get too hung up on the technology. Another thing is he talked about the flywheel in Good to Great. And he talks about like basically said, think of this like I want to say it was like 50-foot thick, big old like 5,000-pound steel wheel, and you're trying to turn it. And he said like the first turn, after like 2 or 3 hours, you've moved it a couple inches, and then it basically, in his example, he said it took like 12 hours to get like a full rotation. But then because you have momentum in the flywheel, the second rotation takes, I don't know, let's just say it's like 8 hours, and then it was like 4 hours, and then 2 hours. And his example is a little bit different, but it's the gist. The timing's different. I can't remember what he said for like how many hours. But he said by the end, you're moving that wheel in a good circle at a good pace just by touching it. You're just like boom, 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 like keeping the momentum going. And he said if somebody were to ask like, oh, which push was it that got the flywheel going? He said that'd be a silly question, because you couldn't say that any push was more important or more relevant or more impactful than another, right? That first push is what got everything going, but the pushes that you're doing right now, just with the pass of your hand, is what's keeping it going. So one got it going, one's keeping it going. They're all important, but in that, consistency is key. Could you imagine if you had this big flywheel and you just started to get it to turn, and then you're like, you know what, actually I think I want to turn it the other direction? Then you're going to stop all your momentum and you have to start all over trying to push momentum the other direction. And in Good to Great, obviously in that book he's talking about companies that were subpar and they became great companies versus companies that were subpar and then they just continue to become more and more subpar, the comparison companies. And he talked about the comparison companies, they continued to basically change direction on that flywheel because they didn't have a solid hedgehog concept. They didn't have a solid mission statement. So they kept changing what they were doing and the tactics that they were taking in order to get there continuously, versus the great companies, they kept just doing their thing, doing their thing, doing their thing, doing their thing until they had a solid momentum on the flywheel. So that was awesome book, Good to Great. If you haven't read Good to Great, I totally recommend that you guys definitely watch the book recap and read the book yourself because it's super good. I also want to talk about the cash flow game. If you guys have not played the cash flow game, like I am talking about this thing, like it is like a must-have. It's a must-have for investment mindset, in my opinion, just to get a taste of this, especially if you've never done investing before. And I'll tell you guys, there's only 2 times that I've played this game. I've played the game a lot. There's only 2 times in the game that I've ever gone bankrupt, and I did not become a millionaire. Once is when I over-leveraged myself with what I would call no-lose investments, right? You're buying a stock for like $1, you're buying a house just like super, super cheap. But I bought so much, I bought it all in debt just because I wanted to try it and see what happens. And I was way over leveraged. And the second that something went wrong, everything came crumbling down. And it felt really good for a little bit because I had all this cash flow, but then it was like, you lose your houses, you have some sort of expense come up, you have to keep borrowing money because you really don't have that much coming in the door. If life went perfect and that life never went wrong and the market just kept going up, you'd be great, right? But if you over leverage yourself and then something changes in the market, like you're stuck. The second time that I lost the game and I went bankrupt, I had lost my job multiple times around because, like, basically every time you get a paycheck, that's like, a month. And so every loop you have the opportunity, or I don't know if opportunity is the right word, but there's a possibility of losing your job because of downsizing. But basically you lose your job and for like, and then you lose a couple turns. But anyways, I hit that like 3 or 4 times in a row. And at the same game, I bought a $17,000 boat, which wasn't my choice. You just run across these doodads, and I was handed a boat and a $17,000 cost for it. I bought a $4,000 TV, and basically, I hadn't had enough opportunity to pay down my debts of my $26,000 in credit card debt or my $15,000 in car loans at that point. And so it was just a surmounting amount of just weight on my capital. And it's really made me think, like, how many people out there have tons of credit card debt, has tons of car loans, have their house maxed out, and then they also go buy a boat, and they also go buy like a really nice TV, and they go buy all the different things in the world, and they're just in debt up to their eyeballs, and they just keep that process going, pushing the debt out further and further and further. And it's like, man, if you can just stop that negative behavior, wipe everything out, pay off the debt, do the Dave Ramsey baby steps. Like when I play that game again, I play that just like I would real life. I get my $1,000 emergency fund, and then I save up 2 to 3 months of expenses, and then $1,000 emergency fund. Then I pay off my debt. Then the 2 to 3 months or 3 to 6 months of emergency funds. I just do 3 months. 3 months of emergency fund. Then I start investing. And next thing you know, like you're investing, a couple $100s at a time. Then it's a couple thousand. Then you're getting like, couple $1,000s on payouts, then you're getting like $10,000 on payouts, reinvesting most everything, and then all of a sudden you're getting to like 20,000, 30, 50,000, 70,000, $100,000 investments, returns. All of a sudden you're to this point where it's like you went from like investing a couple $100s at a time to a couple thousand, to now you're investing like $70,000 at a time, $100,000 at a time. You're investing more than most people are making in a year. And then you're investing, then you get to the point where it's like you're investing $200,000, $300,000 at a time. You're definitely making more than like most housecomes in America make in a year. And then you become a millionaire. And at that point is when I usually start investing in cash flow. I build up, capital, and then I just start dumping into cash flow. And I win the game every time. But it's a very strategic approach that I take to playing the game. But yeah, and then every other time I've played the game, I become a millionaire. Sometimes I had easy opportunities fall into my lap at the right time, at the right place, and other times it was a very, very slow build up to build the wealth. But every time I became a millionaire, and then every time I became a millionaire, I began to cash flow, and eventually I graduated out of the rat race into the overall like dream part of the game, and I was able to buy my dream or build up my cash flow in that area, which helps you, which lets you win the game and all that kind of stuff. It was great. That game is such a wonderful reminder every time I play it that if I follow the right steps, I'll get there. And I needed that yesterday, because yesterday we had a great time at the tax sale. Spent like $4,000, bought somewhere in the ballpark of like $15,000 to $20,000 worth of real estate, just depending on where it all sells at for. I should say price wise, what it all sells for. But it was kind of tough, because I walked away from that and I was like, man, why am I working to save up, my emergency fund when I could just go ahead and start investing? And I just had to remind myself, because if anything comes up, right, like let's say that the van breaks down or the car breaks down or my AC goes out, I want to be able to have the money that I need to take care of those expenses without having to liquidate my investments early. So I have to have a little bit of a nest egg to take care of any sort of emergencies, and that's what the emergency fund is for. If I lost my job or anything crazy like that, right, I have to have some sort of emergency fund built up. But then I can then at that point invest, because I can sleep easy knowing, hey, if anything comes up in my day-to-day life, I have that covered. But I also have my assets building over here. It's like two separate things. Going to the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, Wealth Defined, there was such a great example of this on page 110. It's a quote: "Wealth is a person's ability to survive so many numbers of days forward. Or if I stopped working today, how long could I survive?" And so basically, to break that down, like if you had a monthly expenses of $6,000 a month, then once you have $6,000 a month in passive cash flowing assets, you're wealthy. This is simplicity of it. And I thought, because for a long time, like I wanted to find wealth, and I wanted to find wealth legacy. And I know what they mean in my brain, but like having a really good verbiage for what is wealth and what is legacy. And now I have wealth. Wealth is the ability to be able, the ability to cover your monthly expenses without you having to lift a finger, right? And so for me, like I think our monthly expenses, if we're like on our tight budget, it's like $3,800 a month. On our, somewhat more loose but still like conservative budget, it's like $4,500 a month. So we're somewhere in that range, right? So that's not me like living it up, but that is saying like even if I lost my job, if I was pulling in, $3,800 to $4,500 a month, I would not lose money. Now, if an emergency of life came up that was like an outside expense, then that would draw away from that. So I definitely want to be able to build more than that. I also want to be able to have enough cash flow to build and pay into purchasing more assets and stuff like that, so I can keep the cash flow churning and building it bigger and bigger. But that's the goal. How can I get to a place where I could be financially in a situation where I could do whatever I felt like the Lord called me to do? If I felt like the Lord called me to go work at this nonprofit and that nonprofit can't pay me, or maybe they can only pay me $10 an hour, 10 hours a week, but I've got to work 20 or 30 hours a week to really fulfill all the needs that need to be done. Well, hey, that $10 an hour for 10 hours a week, that gives me money to invest into assets. And then everything else that I need month to month is coming in cash flow over here. And so that's just happening on autopilot. I have the freedom to do what I feel like it is that I need to do in my life to live out my life's purpose and mission statement. And I think that's just a great freedom. So when we talk about wealth, like I don't want you to think that you have to be like a multi-millionaire or billionaire or something crazy like that in order to be wealthy. Wealthy simply means that if you stopped working today, your lights wouldn't go out. And it's not just like, well, you have enough in the bank that your lights wouldn't go out for so many months. It's that you have enough in cash flow that you are making money passively that you could go into it just infinitely, right? I mean, at some point, obviously, those notes end or you have to fix up rentals or stuff like that. But theoretically, with where you're at right now, if you lost your job, if you stopped working, you could infinitely make enough money to cover all of your needs. Page 339, there was a quote: the key to becoming wealthy is the ability to convert earned income into passive income or portfolio income as quickly as possible. And so with your money, don't think about it right now as like having a bunch of fun. I'm working on my own mindset in that right now. What I'm thinking about, how do I be most strategic with every dollar as possible, is converting every single dollar that I get in that I can into passive or portfolio income as fast as possible. Now, right here in the show, I actually wanted to show you guys our goal posters because we put together our goal posters because last week we finished paying off our debt. Yes. Or yeah, it was our consumer debt outside of our house, which is super exciting. So if you could celebrate with me, I would really appreciate it. We were so pumped for that. Like that was awesome. And it might sound crazy because we had a whole bunch of money at one point. For anybody that's been following along in my journey, you know that we had like over $100,000 cash when we got done with the land deals, and I didn't pay off my debt because I didn't make wise financial decisions back then. But hey, that's okay. It's in the past, right? That money's gone, but we're gonna keep moving forward. But now my debt's paid off, and now we have our other goal poster up on the wall. We have $1,000 for we need $12,000 on our emergency fund to have kind of like a emergency fund for 3 months. And it's like 11,000 and some change, like 11,900 and something. And so I'll show you the pictures of those because they're really cool and I'm excited about them. Libby and I are making those together. We're on the same page financially, and it's so good to be on the same page financially with your spouse, because it gives you that synchronization. But I meant to show you guys a picture because they're actually pinned up on the wall in my bedroom. But I'll grab a picture on my phone for next week and show you guys. I wrote in my journal, there was one point where I was having a little bit of a tough week earlier this week. And I journaled, I said, I'm looking forward to the day that I'll be excited for Mondays again. But for now, my satisfaction must be 100% rooted in, I was writing a letter, I call my Dear God letter. So I said, rooted in you, talking to the Lord. And I just said, help, Lord. And so I want to let you guys know, for like all the cool stuff that's come up this week and all the stuff that I've learned, like at the end of the day, like I do struggle to enjoy Mondays right now. I struggle to enjoy like going into the next work week. It's not that I don't enjoy the guys that I work with. I just don't really enjoy what I'm doing for work. But I put myself in this position because of poor financial decisions that I've made. If I had made wiser financial decisions, I probably wouldn't be in this position. So now I'm making wiser financial decisions going forward. So for you guys, if you're thinking about building wealth, building a legacy, having that freedom, right? All I would say to you guys right now is, even if you don't enjoy Mondays and you don't really look forward to Mondays, it doesn't have to be that way forever. If you take the right steps and you follow the path, right? It's just like we said in the movie. If you find your goal, you know how far you are, and you draw a roadmap, you figure out where you're at, where you want to go, and then what are the steps going to take to get there. I would say on the first half, Dave Ramsey does a great job with baby steps, being able to follow those baby steps to get out of debt, build an emergency fund, get to the place of being able to invest in. Not to say that Dave Ramsey doesn't do a good job on the investing side, but I think there are some other teachers out there who do a phenomenal job teaching on the investing side. As I get into more of Dave Ramsey's investing stuff, my perspective on that may change, but from what I've learned so far, there's some other teachers that I've gone to their investing frameworks and mindsets, and those have been awesome. The mindset, you might be in a mindset where you just have to learn how to get control of your money and stop letting your money control you. That's a Dave Ramsey thing. Like, he will teach you guys relentlessly how to do that. If you've already got that figured out, you're out of debt, you have savings, and you're figuring out how to go to investing. Okay, well, now it might be a mindset thing of how do I invest in the right ways. But to getting out of debt, building an emergency fund, and building funds for investment is a perfect time to work on, your mindset for investing. But also, you're working on your, at that point in the beginning, you're working on your mindset just for getting control of your money. Then you have to learn the theory and the strategy of what are the steps to be able to get there, and then you apply that. And then as you get to the end of that journey, which I'm almost the end of that journey, I'm really working on my mindset, right? Let me just read my notes here. Once you have funds, then work on specific applications. So for me, I got lost because I only focused on the strategy of investing money. I never got my mindset right for how to handle money. So every time I had funds available, I would lose them all once again due to a bad mindset. On the other side of that coin is people who only focus on mindset, but they never get into the strategy, which allows them to fully get the plane up off the ground. So what I mean by that is I was just focused on how do you make money? How do you make money? How do you make money? But every time I'd make money, I'd get this sum of money and then I'd spend it foolishly because I didn't have my mindset built on how do you handle money once you have it. There are other people that I know that are amazing savers, way better savers than I am. It just comes natural to them. I don't understand it at all, but they also don't understand how I have such a risk tolerance and how I can invest aggressively, and it just makes sense to me. And so that's okay. So I have to work on my how do I save money side of my brain, and some people have to work on how they invest side of their brain, right? And because there's so many people that I know right now, and they have a whole bunch of money saved up, and they don't really know how to put it out there, and so they're just stuck. They're like, I have this money, but I don't know how to invest it. And so, there's some mental hurdles that you have to get over, including just not having a section of money that you're just like, hey, I'm just going to count that money lost before I even invest it. Don't make sure that's not 100% of your funds, like make it a small percentage, but invest that way. There's also investing in your education, and I've bought lots of courses, I've done lots of education, and so find somebody that will help educate you and get you going in the right direction, giving you, teaching the theory, teaching you the strategy, teaching you the how to, as well as helping you in the mindset of that, so you can get in the right place mentally to start making some of those decisions. And then finally, you just have to apply. You have to apply it so you can get that plane up off the ground. So for me, my first goal, paying off all debt, check. It was super exciting. Goal 2, 3 months emergency fund. We're working on that. It's not, obviously a check mark yet. We're getting there. Goal number 3 is going to be investments and tax sales, unless something changes on the bot side. We've had an awesome week with the bot, but we've also been working on the bot for little over 2 years now. And so I'm not necessarily holding my breath on it, but we are hoping that sometime early in 2024 that we're going to be able to turn that on and get that plane up off the ground. And so if that plane goes up off the ground, my funds may go into that instead of tax sales. But either way, I'm going to be looking how to flip my cash. I just need to start flipping my money. Once I get enough capital built up from flipping it, then I will take it. You get a much slower payout on cash flow, but cash flow is also slow, steady, and consistent. And so then I'm just going to focus on that consistent cash flow. Yeah. And what was interesting, it was, where did I read this? Oh no, this was this morning, actually, in my quiet time. I had this note here and I was trying to think about it. So this is from Rachel Cruz, and I have 2 devotionals. One is purely just my relationship with the Lord. I'm going through another short devotional that's all about just what the Bible says about money. And Dave Ramsey has some really cool studies on that. So I went through one for him and the one with Rachel Cruz, which is Dave Ramsey's daughter. And but it's all kind of under the Ramsey's products. But she said every spending decision moves you closer to either success or distress. I thought, wow, that's really good. And the verse that she pointed to this morning was Proverbs 21:10. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. And she said that Proverbs 21:20 points out that wise people save while fools waste what they have. Wise people don't just throw money around. They save when they need to save, and they spend when it makes sense to spend. Meanwhile, foolish people spend money as fast as they possibly can. I thought, wow, that was really good. That used to be me. I used to spend money as fast as I could. But now I'm to a point where I'm learning how to save when I need to save and spend when it makes sense to spend, not just when I want to spend. And so really just thinking through that and building up that mindset. Lastly, I just want to share with you guys, just like I said with the tax sales, I've got another deal that I'm working on with the business that I'm working on. It's 2 acres in Cleburne. And this deal is taking me a lot of extra work, a lot of extra putting time, energy, effort into it. I'm not going to get paid for any of my extra time, energy, or effort that I'm putting into the deal, but I'm getting to learn so much stuff around land development, around this specific land development idea that I've had before. And I'm getting to basically learn how to do it on somebody else's dime. That's how I'm looking at it. I'm basically getting to go to school right now, and somebody else is paying me to do it because I'm still getting a paycheck. I might not be getting paid more, but I'm getting to go to school and learn what I want to learn on somebody else's dime. And this opportunity didn't just pop out of the blue. I was working hard for the team and closing deals. This deal didn't actually originally come to me, but they knew I had helped other people on land deals using what I already knew about land from stuff that I've done in the past. And basically, the guy wasn't sure if he was going to be able to close this deal. And so the sales guy that was kind of running point on this deal handed it off to me and said, hey, if you can get this one finished, that'd be great. I was able to take it over the finish line. Now I'm getting to do the process. And so it wasn't just like this opportunity just fell in my lap, right? It was me going, I've already learned so much in the past. I was bringing as much value to my team as I could. They know that I know a lot about land because of how much I've helped and brought value to the team. This wasn't even my deal to begin with, but when the other guy wasn't able to get it done, they brought it to me, asking me if I could finish the deal. I was able to finish it, doing a couple things that I've never done before, but I stepped outside of my comfort zone to learn it so I could figure out how to get it done. And I've learned how to put together promissory notes and deed of trust and how to write, a loan that uses a property as the asset that protects the note, which is really cool. I didn't really expect to learn that. I've also learned how to handle how to be the developer that handles the communication with the jurisdiction for land development. And then just a couple other things that I've gotten to learn in the process, but all of those coming together, I know those are all going to benefit me in my real estate journey going forward, which is super exciting. And so all that to say, if you don't know how to do something, then learn. Look for an opportunity to learn. Look for a situation where you can learn. Put yourself out there, add value where you can, and then the opportunities will come. And they may come in weird ways that you didn't expect. They may come at times when you don't really expect them, but when they come, take advantage of them, lock them up and get them done. So with that said, it was awesome to have you guys here on another episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. Make sure that you're on the lookout for the Rich Dad Poor Dad book report. Make sure that you guys go watch the Good to Great book report. I'm going to keep reading through Think and Grow Rich. I'm obviously not going to read it in 2 days like I did Rich Dad Poor Dad. It was just a great book that I really enjoyed this last weekend, and so I just ate through that book. But anyways, it was awesome to hang out with you guys. I will keep you guys updated next week on how stuff's going with the bot. I'm hoping that we have awesome headway made through December, and then January is really kind of like some final testing phases before, which we thought we were in a final testing phase before, but we figured out some things since we started our previous final testing phase. So this will be final testing phase number 2. But hopefully when we start that up in January, we're gonna get some final answers and we're gonna be able to get this bad boy online. Finally, at that point, it'll be almost 2.5 years, be making some money off of it. That would make me happy. It would make my wife really, really happy. For any of my other investors, entrepreneurs in the house, let me hear you. I know that you know what I'm talking about. That sometimes, your spouse is like, hey, I support you and I love you, but when is that thing going to make money? And so anyways, we're close, and I say that all the time, but we really are. And I'm really excited to have that launch. So it was awesome hanging out with you guys. It was a great another episode of the Wealthy Legacy Journey. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. And next week, I'll make sure that I take a picture of those goal posters so you can see what they look like. And my hope with that is that you take those as kind of inspiration to set up your very own goal posters for yourself. So it was great hanging out with you. And here's another episode dedicated to you and your own personal wealthy legacy journey. I will see each and every one of you next week. Bye, y'all.